Hi everyone, this is Rob Watson, the module leader for Tech 1502, Introduction to Community Media, and this short video overview will cover the topics that we'll discuss in the 10th lecture. We're nearly up to that kind of Christmas break point, which is good. We're making very good progress so far. And what I want to talk about this week is we've talked about this a little bit in previous weeks, but alternative or DIY media and what is meant in more detail by alternative spaces and DIY spaces. So we've established that community media often can be viewed as, or is said to, open up spaces that are non-mainstream, that are much more about developing a kind of line of thinking, if you like, or a sense of expression which is outside of the kind of dominant mainstream view of what news stories are, of what representation is of certain groups, communities, neighbourhoods, subcultures, and actually our politics is defined by the mainstream view, and then there's alternative views and views which are outside of the kind of dominant political system, if you like. So what we want to focus on is there's a kind of couple of key issues and the kind of the kind of community media buzz phrases that we're learning, and we're learning to talk in this kind of language about identity and what that means and how that is expressed, and what the kind of framework that we might think that we express our identity within helps us to structure a sense of identity. So this is kind of a notion that's based on a model of what we call cultural production. Is that the things that we do, that we identify with, that we show our individuality or our membership of a particular group, how we belong to a particular community, that these are actually active, participative-based practices, which give us can be looked at as, if you like, cultural work, which we use and we can value and we can use to understand the kind of shifting ground of culture and social relationships. So we'll look at this in terms of, we've talked about this before in terms of non-professional media, but there's some examples that we'll go through. There's one about lo-fi media, lo-fi photography particularly we'll look at, and what makes this kind of a sense, where does independent, what makes you an independent media producer, an independent cultural producer, and then what makes this sustainable? Because you acting by yourself or acting in small groups, there's no money in this, so you've got to have a particular motivation. You've got to be driven by something which isn't driven by the marketplace, isn't driven by the ideals of commercialism or bureaucracy or professionalism. So there's a focus on creativity in this active participation as we form our identities through alternative media. And in a sense what we're doing is we're bridging communities. We are the pontificators, and the word pontificate, the pont is I think its origins is in bridge. So the Pope, for example, is the pontiff. He's a bridge builder. So the idea is that we're using our community media skills and our community media outlook to help to support and build bridges between the mainstream and the non-mainstream, between the marginalised and the non-marginalised, if you like, so that we the focus is on getting people interacting rather than keeping people separate and apart. So alternative media relies on a kind of different model of organisation. So it's much more democratic. It's more horizontal. So there's less. There's no hierarchy, or you do what you can to minimise any sense of a hierarchy, and you're allowing people's activities and people's engagement and involvement in a community media project to rise through from the grassroots, if you like. So we can look at this in terms of some examples, and to what extent we might ask the kind of questions about this. To what extent is this kind of a pushback against mainstream media values? And how is it expressed, and how do we enact this responsibly, and how do we do this in a way which satisfies the demands that we have about the kind of roles that we want to play within our social environment. So the notes, as ever, are up on the DMU Commons wiki. Just go to wiki.our.dmu.ac.uk and look for the Tech 1502 section, The what else? No, that's about it for this one. So I'll see you at the lecture.